Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for attending. I think that these elections in the US come in a very, very unique and defining moment. Israel is basically in a stage where it has dismantled Hamas as a military entity, where Hezbollah is in a situation that is also in a process of being dismantled. Hezbollah in South Lebanon is hardly functioning anymore as a military entity. They're shooting here and there, but it's not really organized. Many terrorists escaped. We know what's the situation with the strategic leadership of Hezbollah. Most of it was destroyed. And in a meeting I had with the Minister of Defense a few weeks ago, before we attacked in Iran, one of the things we discussed is the fact that Iran, for many, many years, has built its ability to keep the regime by building strategic depths. Iran always talks about strategic depths. They see Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, militias in Iraq are their strategic depths that enables them to really keep Iran safe and mostly keep the regime safe. Israel has dismantled Iran's strategic depths. The two most important proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah. Also the attacks on the Houthis, some of them by the coalition, some of them by Israel, also degraded their capabilities. And as Israel stripped them from their strategic depths, Israel launched an attack with more than 100 airplanes and took out almost all Iranians' air defense. There were two kinds of air defense. Some of the air defense was local defending strategic sites, like the nuclear sites, and there was regional air defense defending airspace overall in Iran. Israel attacked both. And if, after dismantling Hamas and Hezbollah, the Iranian regime remained with their underpants, after the attack on the air defense, now even the underpants are down. And this regime is standing completely naked, defenseless against any attack. And what we understand, and when I say we, it's not just IDSF, it's the Israeli government, that in this scenario, the Iranian regime will make a run towards nuclear capabilities. So we are entering a race, and this race can end only in two ways. It's either Iran becomes nuclear, or the sites are destroyed before that. This is not about sanctions anymore, and not about discussions, and not about the JCPOA. This is about really not having much time to deal with this, and it needs to be dealt urgently. I think that in this defining moment, after Israel stripped Iran from all its capabilities, now the new administration is going in a very dramatic moment. We know that the Prime Minister spoke with President Trump 3 times and said that they are aligned when it comes to Iran. We know what the Prime Minister thinks that should be done. We should attack their military and nuclear sites. And after we dismantled their strategic depths and after taking out all this air defense, Israel is basically handing the Middle East on a silver plate to the US, having done most of the job alone. Has really set the stage for what comes next. And what needs to come next is an American-Israeli attack on these sites, which will really dismantle the Shia axis. When we start the new Jewish year, Rosh Hashanah, we start reading again the Bible from Genesis. And the second parasha, the next weekend, is of Noach. And in this parasha, it starts with an interesting phrase, and the land was full of Hamas. This is what's written in the Bible. The land became full of Hamas. And then when God sees the land full of Hamas, he doesn't say, okay, you know what, let's do a pinpointed operation. Let's go in and out. Let's attack and let them stay. No, no, no. If the land is filled with Hamas, you do the job and eradicate them. And he does it the way God does it, floods the whole world. So we're not going to flood the whole world, but we need to do the job to eradicate these enemies and make sure that we really bring security and prosperity for the region for decades and not for a short time, because it's obvious that if Hamas or Hezbollah or this regime with its nuclear aspirations will stay, then in a year, in 5 years, 7 years, in 10 years, we'll have to go on a full-scale war again. It's not an option. We cannot take every 5, 10 years the whole nation to such big wars. We need to get it over with. And I think that the election of President Trump has the potential to really bring a policy that will do 3 important things. First, bring down the Shia axis. We need to bring it down. Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Houthis, militias in Iraq. We really need to deal seriously, and it's not so complicated. I mean, I think one of the things that always make people in America worry, they say, okay, we wasted 20 years in Iraq for nothing, thousands of soldiers killed, 20 years in Afghanistan, boots on the ground. And then when you talk about, okay, let's deal with this regime, people think about 20 years, think about boots on the ground. It's not about that. What Israel did in a week or 2 against Hezbollah can be done 2-3 days in Iran. It's one big airstrike. It's not about boots on the ground. It's not about everything that coalitions experienced in the Middle East for many years. It's something different. Very short, pinpointed, and will do the job. Following the collapse of the Shia axis, I can see huge peace agreements that will benefit the whole globe, everybody. I can see an alliance that in this scenario might even bring countries like Lebanon or Iraq to join peace in the region that will extend all the way to the Pacific, to Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan, Oman. Huge peace agreement that will also bring a lot of prosperity to everybody, because this will open us, both administrations, Biden and Trump before, talked about new routes of trade connecting India to Emirates and from Emirates through Saudi Arabia and Jordan to Israel. Bringing down prices and dealing with inflation. Following that, I think that there is a potential of really trying to bring a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that will not undermine Israel's security or national aspirations. And we remember what was Trump's plan in the first time he was president, the deal of the century, that included applying sovereignty in the Jordan Valley in all Jewish towns. I think this deal will come back, but even in a better formula for Israel. So I think that many great things can happen. And I think that this process, especially dealing with Iran at the beginning, will also globally stabilize the situation because the world is pretty much out of control. It will be interesting for me, although it doesn't have directly anything to do with Israel, but it will be interesting for me to see what will be the policy in the Russian-Ukrainian war. I think there might be a change from the current administration and really trying to push for an end of the war. And maybe building a different relationship in the future with Russia. So this is what I see. There's big things. I think that this year, unlike the last year, I'm talking about the Jewish year, sorry, which was a very hard year for Israel. I think that this year is going to be an historical one in many ways, and really a chance for Israel to completely shift around the reality and create security and prosperity. So I'm looking forward to what is going to happen.
Any questions for the general?
You said that you think that the American will join you to strike the nuclear facilities in Iran?
Yes.
They will do it?
I believe so. I mean, there are three options. One option is, yes, America will lead the coalition. Again, it's one airstrike. It's not, too complicated. They have a whole army in the Middle East. It can be a US-led attack. It can be the US saying to Israel, you know what, you guys, you do the job, we'll help you. And the worst case scenario, it will be Israel alone. But there is no scenario that in the coming months, this regime is not on its knees. Whether it's Israel doing it alone, whether it's the US assisting Israel to do it alone, or whether it's a US-led coalition. I'm hoping to see a US-led coalition for one main reason: it will be faster. It will end the war faster. The day there will be an attack on Iran, the war will end. The whole axis will collapse. And it's already on the verge of collapsing. We need to really finish the job.
There is a risk of facing a nuclear Iran in 18 months if it doesn't work.
Yeah, so because we know that Iran will try to make a run towards nuclear capabilities, it needs to happen fast. We cannot wait too much. It's not going to be long. Israel is going to try to convince the US to lead the coalition. If it's not going to happen, Israel will do it by itself.
And I think the follow-up was, if it's somewhat successful, but not completely successful, is it possible that Iran might be able to rebuild their capabilities in 18 months?
No way. I mean, if we attack, we attack. They're not going to be able to rebuild themselves afterwards for many years.
But this option wants to end the war, so
Yes, but I think that when Trump says end the war and when this administration says end the war, it's not the same end of war. When he says to Israel, okay, win already, he wants a win. You understand that we need to win, okay? There's a difference between saying, okay, let's win fast, but win, than saying, let's de-escalate, let's do a ceasefire, knowing that it means to lose. It means you didn't eradicate your enemies, you didn't win decisively. Two different scenarios. I think, I had a lot of engagement with the leading think tanks on the conservative side in the US, whether it's Heritage, Hudson, FDD. And what I saw in the last 2 years is all of them moving from talking about sanctions to talking about military attack on Iran. I think there is an understanding that we are beyond the talk about sanctions and all of that. It's over. Certainly when Iran reached such advanced stage of enriching uranium, there's no point to talk anymore about these issues. We need to do something. Unless Iran says, okay, that's it, I'm dismantling everything, take all the uranium, and and goes back. But if they don't do that, and I don't see them at the moment willing to do that, then we'll have to deal with this militarily.
Is this what you're conceptualizing as security-based diplomacy rather than diplomacy-based security?
So usually, I think that, when we look at Israel's national security, the way we think about it, okay, is first and foremost, you don't talk about these issues by distancing from your basic values. So we are Zionists, we are the people of Israel, this is our land, this is where we start, no matter what the challenges are and which problems we are facing. Then we say, let's figure out what is needed to secure Israel for generations to come. I wrote a whole book about it, which was published in English lately, No Retreat. And it really puts a vision of what is needed to secure Israel for generations to come. I mean, this is, if you are a businessman and you want to do a negotiation, you don't go and negotiate it if you don't have red lines. What are the red lines? How can you negotiate something if you don't have red lines? So you need to figure out your red lines. Now, for a people like us that have been expelled from the land 4 times, by the Assyrians, by the Babylonians, by the Romans, by the Muslim conquest, I think that somebody who was expelled 4 times really needs to make sure it doesn't happen again. And we have to really set the terms needed for our existence, not looking at the next 5 years or 10 years. We're talking about generations to come, for the long term. Taking in account that the basic reality is that this concept you build about national security needs to address a situation of war, a serious war. You don't build a national security concept taking in account there will be eternal peace. There is no such thing as eternal peace. I always say the story that when I was Deputy Division Commander of the Gaza Strip, I had all these delegations always coming, like you guys, I used to brief them on the border overlooking the northern part of Gaza, and each time it was the same. They would ask me, what's going on in Gaza? And I would tell them, basically from the day of the judges in the Bible, same thing, The Gazans attack us, we bring the people, we attack them back, again and again and again, the days of Samson. At the end of the book of the Judges, it says, and the land was quiet for 40 years. So our rabbis asked why the Bible needs to state that. Every sentence in the Bible has a deep meaning. And the answer is that 40 years of quiet in the land of Israel is an event of biblical dimension. It never happened in 4,000 years. So we are living in a biblical moment. We at least need to try to replicate this, Maybe we'll also manage to do 40 years. Maybe. We'll do a biblical event. But for this, we need to eradicate our enemies. You cannot reach 40 years of quiet by letting Hamas stay in power, or Hezbollah, or this regime having nuclear weapons. So we need to do the job, and I think that, when we in IDSF talked about it 10 months ago, or even on the 8th of October, we said it's going to be a decisive win. People look at us like we're crazy. What are you talking about? But I think that more and more people now see that actually Israel can win a decisive win, and especially if the US joins. I spent Yom Kippur, part of the time I went to the synagogue, the other part I was reading the second book of Churchill, and all the letters he wrote to Roosevelt, trying to convince him to join the Second World War. And it was amazing to see that even when the Nazis conquered all of Europe, including Paris, and 300,000 British soldiers surrounded in Dunkirk, it wasn't enough to convince the Americans to fight. It took time. So America, I think it takes time to really move this huge country, but once they move, nothing stops them. So I hope we really manage to convince the administration that that's it. This is the moment that we need to fight together.
question?
Hi, Amir. Thank you very much for that. Coming from Australia, so we've just released our new National Defence Strategy. So again, I guess since I've been here a year now, I'm still, I guess, perplexed that the IDF or from the government, you don't really have a national defence strategy. So if you talk about...
A written one, you mean?
Well, there is a one back from 2005 or whatever it is, but and I guess I know you've always been reactive, and we've heard briefs just recently that Israel is now going to be proactive, and you'll go in and take. So I'm still. When will the IDF or when will the government produce a national defence strategy? If you're going on like strategy of deterrence, security-based diplomacy, to me that's getting there to be a national strategy. When will we see one?
Yeah, so we took upon ourselves this coming months to write for the government a strategy, because Israel has never written a formal paper of national security strategy. But I think that if I have to outline how would the strategy like that look, I would say that first is the understanding that we need to be able to defend ourselves by ourselves. Israel needs a big army, not a small army. We need to be able to produce our own munitions, most of them. And we need to invest in our industries, and it's happening as we speak. I can say that a few weeks ago when I met the Minister of Defense, I went to talk afterwards to Eyal Zamir, the head of the Ministry of Defense. And of course, the obvious question to ask as I went to his room is, okay, what's going on with the munitions? How much munitions we have? And he smiled and said, Amir, you remember where we were on the 7th of October? Imagine what we shot in a whole year, and now we have much, much, much more. So the Israeli industries are growing exponentially. As the war is evolving, the Israeli industries are building more and more and more capabilities and extending the lines of production. And this is not going to stop. Israel is going to continue to expand its military industries. As we speak, they are moving more and more to deal with Iran. I mean, as Hamas and Hezbollah are being destroyed, the center of attention of the whole Israeli defense establishment is moving east to Iran, and they are dealing with more with capabilities that have to do with Iran, but still producing a lot of munitions to sustain the other arenas. I think that there is a growing understanding that Israel needs to reside along defensible borders, and the only defensible borders for a country with the width of 45 miles is the Jordan Valley. I think that there is an understanding that Israel will never again allow any existence of a terror army on its borders. It's not going to happen anymore. Not in Lebanon, not in Gaza, not in Syria, not in Judea and Samaria, or not in Jordan. So the whole idea is being much more proactive and not enabling anybody to build terror infrastructure like that. If we can do it through peace, great. I mean, if we can sign a peace agreement with Lebanon, great. But if not, it certainly will be imposed militarily. And I think that we learned a big lesson that we in IDSF understood before, that you cannot deter jihadism. People who are willing to die and believe that death is the ultimate thing, are not deterred. They're willing to die. So if you give them enough weapons and capabilities, they will go for it, and you cannot build on deterrence. I think that our national security ideas are not detailed enough. I mean, talking about needing to deter, and if you don't deter, then you need to be able to alert, and if after you alert, you need to be able to win. I can take this concept to Ukraine, and it's exactly the same. I mean, what is special about Israel? I mean, any country needs to be able to deter, to alert, and once it's attacked, need to win. This is not explaining what's special about Israel. What is unique for Israel? So we're trying to really go into the details that have to do with Israel, that are unique for us, and not just talking generally about deterrence or about being able to know that a war is coming and the obvious saying that once it's coming, you need to win. It's not good enough. We need a much more detailed national security concept, and we at least are going to present the government a detailed document about that.
Let's clarify, we're independent of the government, but we are presenting a
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's somewhere. I'm here for
By the way, there are many groups now working on ideas. We're one of them.
Any other questions? No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. I hope this was interesting. I hope this was illuminating, and we'll see how predictive it was over